I wasn't looking for love that morning. I was just trying to return a toolbox. I was 23, renting a tiny apartment where every pipe seemed to leak. Mrs. Elena Carter lived 3 doors down. She was 47, calm in a way that made noisy people lower their voices. We had exchanged little more than polite greetings until the day she knocked on my door asking if I knew anything about fixing a stubborn kitchen cabinet. I didn't know much, but I knew enough. Her house smelled faintly of fresh coffee and old books. Sunlight spilled across the wooden floor while she apologized for dragging the neighbor into her problems. I laughed and told her I'd probably make the cabinet worse before I made it better. She smiled. Then we'll blame the cabinet. That should have been the end of it. Instead, I found excuses to stop by. Sometimes to tighten a loose hinge. Sometimes to carry heavy grocery bags. Sometimes, for reasons I couldn't explain even to myself. She never crossed a line. Neither did I. Still, there were moments that lingered longer than they should have. A silence over cooling mugs of coffee. Her eyes searching mine as if she wanted to ask something, then deciding against it. My heart beat stumbling whenever she thanked me with that quiet smile. Looking back, I think both of us were pretending not to notice what was quietly growing between us. Then, as I reached past her to pick up the screwdriver from the counter, our hands touched. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked directly into my eyes and whispered, almost as if the words surprised even her. "Can I ask you something, and will you promise to answer honestly?" She kept her hand resting lightly against mine for only a second, yet it felt impossibly long. "Will you answer honestly?" she asked again, her voice quieter this time. I nodded. She let out a slow breath and looked away toward the kitchen window. "Do I seem lonely?" The question caught me completely off guard. She laughed once, but there wasn't any joy in it. "Forget it." That sounded ridiculous. "It didn't," I said. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The cabinet door I had been fixing hung open between us, forgotten. She finally admitted that her marriage had ended almost a year earlier. There hadn't been shouting or betrayal. Just years of living beside someone who stopped seeing her. The divorce papers had only made official what had already been true for a long time. "I got used to eating dinner in silence," she murmured. "Funny how you can share a house with someone and still feel invisible." I didn't know what to say. Instead, I noticed the little things. The tiny scar near her wrist. The way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear whenever she felt exposed. The untouched cup of coffee growing cold beside the sink. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was asking whether someone could still see her. "You don't seem lonely," I said carefully. "You seem like someone who's been carrying too much by herself." Her eyes lifted to mine. For a moment, the room was so quiet I could hear the old wall clock ticking. Something inside me wanted to tell her how often I'd caught myself thinking about her smile, how I'd started measuring my days by the chance of seeing her. I swallowed the words before they escaped. Then she stepped a little closer and gently rested her hand on my arm. "I made dinner," she whispered. "You don't have to leave yet, unless you want to. I'll stay, I heard myself say before I had time to think. A faint smile crossed Elena's face, not triumphant, just relieved. She served simple pasta and warm bread, apologizing twice for how ordinary it was. I couldn't remember the last meal that felt this peaceful. We talked about everything except the things sitting silently between us. My job. Her garden. The old oak tree outside that somehow survived every storm. Every now and then, she'd catch me looking at her. I'd glance away first. Halfway through dinner, her phone lit up on the table. She froze. The screen displayed a familiar name. She stared at it until the ringing stopped, then quietly turned the phone face down. You don't have to ignore it, I said. I know. She didn't explain who it was. Somehow, I already knew. The silence afterward felt heavier than any conversation we'd had. When I stood to take my empty plate to the sink, she reached for it at the same time. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us moved. Her eyes met mine, searching for something I wasn't brave enough to give. I shouldn't be getting used to this, she whispered. My chest tightened. You mean dinner? No. She looked down at our hands before gently pulling hers away. You. A sharp knock echoed through the house. We stepped apart so quickly it was almost embarrassing. Another knock. This one louder. I wasn't expecting anyone, she murmured. Every now and then, she'd catch me looking at her. I'd glance away first. Halfway through dinner, her phone lit up on the table. She froze. The screen displayed a familiar name. She stared at it until the ringing stopped, then quietly turned the phone face down. You don't have to ignore it, I said. I know. She didn't explain who it was. Somehow, I already knew. The silence afterward felt heavier than any conversation we'd had. When I stood to take my empty plate to the sink, she reached for it at the same time. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us moved. Her eyes met mine, searching for something I wasn't brave enough to give. I shouldn't be getting used to this, she whispered. My chest tightened. You mean dinner? No. She looked down at our hands before gently pulling hers away. You. A sharp knock echoed through the house. We stepped apart so quickly it was almost embarrassing. Another knock. This one louder. I wasn't expecting anyone, she murmured. She walked to the front door while I remained in the kitchen, suddenly aware of how fast my heart was beating. I couldn't see who was outside. I only heard a man's voice. Then Elena answered, her tone careful, almost guarded. What are you doing here? I took one step toward the hallway. And realized everything between us had just become far more complicated. I stopped in the hallway before either of them noticed me. The man at the door wasn't angry. He looked tired. I only came to drop off the last box, he said quietly, setting a small cardboard box on the porch. I found it in the garage. Elena nodded. Thank you. Neither of them reached for the box. I won't stay, he added. I just thought you should have it. There was a pause that felt like the end of a very long chapter. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Elena." She managed a small smile. "I hope you do too." He turned and walked away without looking back. Only after his car disappeared did she close the door. She leaned against it, eyes closed, taking one slow breath before opening them again. "I'm sorry you had to see that," she said. "You don't have to apologize." "I do." She shook her head. "For a second. I forgot how complicated my life still looks from the outside." I stepped closer, close enough to see the faint shine of tears she refused to let fall. "It doesn't change what I see." Her eyes searched mine. "And what do you see?" I hesitated. Every sensible thought told me to leave, to protect both of us from whatever this was becoming. Instead, I answered with the truth. "I see a woman who's spent too long believing she has to carry everything alone." Her lips trembled into the smallest smile. "And you?" she asked softly. "What are you doing here, really?" The question settled between us. Not why I came tonight. Why I kept coming back. I opened my mouth, my heart pounding louder than my thoughts. "I'm here because..." The words caught in my throat as we stood only inches apart, neither of us moving, neither of us looking away. If I finished that sentence, nothing between us would ever be the same. "I'm here because I can't stop looking for reasons to see you." The words escaped before I could pull them back. The room fell silent. Elena didn't step away. She didn't step closer, either. Instead, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't read, then gave a quiet, almost disbelieving laugh. "You really said it." "I did. I kept telling myself I imagined it." Before I could answer, she walked to the small box still sitting by the front door. She picked it up and carefully opened it. Inside were old photographs, a worn notebook, and a folded envelope with my name written across the front. I frowned. "My name? I've been wondering when I'd finally have the courage to give this to you." She handed me the envelope with slightly trembling fingers. Inside was a letter. "Your mother once helped me when my life was falling apart." I stared at the handwriting. "I don't understand." "We worked together years ago," Elena said softly. "Long before you ever moved here. She was the first person who treated me like I mattered when I was going through my divorce." I looked back at the letter. I never knew. She asked me to promise something. My heartbeat quickened. If we ever met again, if life somehow crossed our paths, she wanted me to tell you how proud she was of the kind man you were becoming. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My mother had passed away 3 years earlier. No one had ever mentioned Elena. Tears blurred the words in my hands. Without thinking, Elena reached up and gently wiped one away with her thumb. "I'm sorry you had to learn this like this." I covered her hand with mine. "You didn't lose me tonight," I whispered. "You gave me a piece of her I thought was gone forever." She looked into my eyes, her voice barely audible. "Then maybe we were meant to find each other after all." Neither of us spoke for a long time. The letter rested in my hands, its edges slightly worn from years of being carefully kept. I folded it again, slipped it back into the envelope, and looked at Elena. "My mother trusted you," I said quietly. A tear finally escaped down her cheek. "I was afraid you'd think I kept it from you for the wrong reasons." "I don't." She let out a shaky breath, as though she had been carrying that fear for years. "I kept waiting for the right time," she admitted. "Then you moved in next door, and every time I thought about giving it to you, I found another excuse. Somewhere along the way, it stopped being only about the letter." "I know. You do." I smiled faintly. "Because it stopped being only about fixing cabinets for me." For the first time that evening, she laughed without forcing it. The sound filled the quiet house. "I kept telling myself the age difference mattered more than anything else," she whispered. "I thought walking away would be kinder. Would it have made either of us happier?" She searched my face before slowly shaking her head. "No." I reached for her hand, not suddenly, not to convince her of anything, but simply to let her decide. She looked at our hands for a moment. Then she intertwined her fingers with mine. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," she said. "Neither do I. But I know I'm tired of pretending I don't look forward to seeing you." I stepped a little closer. "Then let's stop pretending." She rested her forehead lightly against mine, her eyes closing with a quiet smile. "No rushing," she whispered. "No hiding, I promised." She nodded once. It wasn't a perfect ending. It was something better. It was two people choosing each other, honestly, for the very first time. The weeks that followed didn't feel like the ending of a story. They felt like the beginning of a life neither of us had expected. We took things slowly, just as we had promised. There were no dramatic declarations, no impossible promises. There were morning walks, shared dinners, and long conversations that stretched late into the night. We learned each other's fears as carefully as we learned each other's favorite songs and coffee orders. The letter from my mother found a place on my bookshelf, not hidden away but proudly kept where I could see it. It reminded me that some people enter our lives at exactly the moment we're ready to understand why. As for Elena, she stopped apologizing for taking up space in the world. She laughed more. She planted flowers in the front yard again. She no longer ate dinner alone. People noticed the years between us before they noticed everything we had in common. We couldn't control that. What we could control was the honesty we built our relationship on. We never pretended it would always be easy. We simply chose each other, again and again. Looking back now, I realize love rarely arrives the way we imagine. Sometimes it begins with a broken cabinet, an unexpected letter, and two lonely people who finally feel seen. If I had walked away that first afternoon, I would have missed the greatest chapter of my life. And if Elena had kept that letter hidden forever, neither of us would have discovered that hope can quietly survive even after heartbreak. Some stories don't begin when two people fall in love. They begin when they finally stop running from it. Thank you for listening to our story. Did you enjoy the story? ****. What kind of stories would you like to hear next? **** romance, second chances, slow burn love, age gap relationships, friends to lovers, or something completely different? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your ideas.